integrative assignment going over Amazon entering India and IKEA with Saudi Arabia. I'm Alexa Blyways, and this is for my spring 2021 transnational strategy class. So starting off with Amazon entering in India, a small summary of the case is that Amazon wanted to enter into India, but they were a late mover. When they got to India, they had a lot of trouble and a lot of issues with the way that Indians run their businesses. And because of that, Amazon really had to go back to the drawing board to consider how they were going to enter India and what they were going to do with a lot of the issues that they were having. Some of the issues I will cover on the other slides, but just to briefly summarize, there's just a lot of corruption and a lot of issues within the government in India that causes foreign companies to have a lot of issues when they try to do business within India. So one of the main challenges for Amazon when they entered into India was the liability of foreignness. They're in a different country that is in Asia, so there's just a big cultural differences. There's a timing problem as well as an industry problem, and they have a lot of issues within India, and they could have avoided these problems if they would have considered that there was a liability of foreignness. So moving on to the first issue of the cultural problems. India has a very different culture than the US or Europe, and because of that, there are some cultural issues. They also are more underdeveloped than Europe and the US, so their people have a different way of life. So starting off with the first cultural problem is that not every house has an address. So this creates a huge problem for Amazon because they want to have fast shipping, and you can't have fast shipping if people don't have exact addresses. An example of this is that instead of having a exact address that they could send it to, their address would be that house behind the church. So this creates a lot of issues for shipping within this country. It's very difficult to get packages delivered because there aren't exact addresses. So the next problem is that only 60% of the population have a bank account. So this makes retail online extremely difficult because if you don't have a credit card, it's very difficult to make an online payment. So since they don't have bank accounts, they don't have debit cards, and they don't have ways to send money virtually. So this creates a huge problem for Amazon because they're going to have to accept cash upon delivery. And this is a problem as well because, like I said previously, not every house has an address. So if they have to accept cash upon delivery and not every house has an address, it's just very difficult to find the houses and get the money. So that's a huge cultural issue within India. Next, they have a minimal use of credit cards. So a lot of people in India don't have a credit card and obviously don't have a bank account. So it makes having a credit card extremely difficult as well. When you don't really have an address, it's difficult to ship the bill, and a lot of them don't have access to computers. They can't pay their bills online, and then they don't have a bank account, so they have no way to send the money to the credit card companies. So the minimal use of credit cards is also a huge cultural problem for Amazon when entering into India. And lastly, they have an unfamiliarity with online shopping. So within their culture, they're very used to shopping in person, shopping at outdoor markets, and doing their shopping that way in person. So they're very unfamiliar with online shopping and online retail, and it's kind of just goes along with not having a credit card, not having a bank account, and it just makes online shopping extremely more difficult, as well as not really having access to a computer. So they're just not very familiar with online shopping. So next, there's an entry mode problem. Before Amazon entered into India, it would be very important to do a lot of cultural research and business ethics and how they operate their businesses. So within India, they do have different laws, obviously, than in America for business. One of the issues was that they must sell Indian products. So this turned Amazon into a platform for the sellers, which kind of makes them turn into almost like an eBay or an Etsy type platform, and this obviously wasn't what Amazon intended in India, so this created some issues. And along with that, because they're so unfamiliar with online shopping, Indian merchants are not really comfortable selling online, so it's going to take a lot of convincing to get them to agree to sell their items online. So this has just created a huge problem for Amazon. So where the entry mode comes in is a joint venture. So because they had different laws in India that makes them have to sell Indian products and they have to be a platform for Indian sellers, they decided that they would form a bunch of joint ventures with these clients so that they could sell their products through Amazon, and Amazon would still be a part of selling the products through a joint venture. This was later made illegal by the Indian government because I think they realized what Amazon was doing to jump through these loopholes, and they gave Amazon a very short amount of time to draft new contracts with their merchants, and they had to take off like exclusive and a bunch of other buzzwords that were in these documents because that, it's signaling that it's a joint venture, so they had to really be careful about that. And before they could even sign the new contracts or even draft some of them, these items were taken off the web. And this created an issue as well because there was a lot of people that were going to social media and saying, I had 20 items in my cart and now I can only buy 4 of them. So this created a huge problem because a lot of the items were taken off Amazon and the customers could not purchase these items. So overall, the entry mode problem in India was that they were successfully doing joint ventures, but eventually these were made illegal, so they had to stop doing that. So the next problem is an industry problem. As you can see on the right, 5 to 10% of the Indian population has shopped online before. So even though 5 to 10% of 1.4 billion is still a huge number, there's still a significant amount of people in the population that have never shopped online. So this is a major problem within the e-commerce industry in India because people are unfamiliar with it, they don't trust it, and they also might not have access to a way that they can shop online. And 92% of the Indian population prefers an in-store shopping experience. So like I mentioned briefly before, culturally, they go to a lot of outdoor markets. As you can see in the picture on the left, they shop in these outdoor markets for most of their food and other items, clothing, etc. They are always shopping outside in these outdoor type markets. And 90 to 95% of the stores are family operated and owned, and the outdoor markets are a huge part of their culture. So they know that they're supporting that their local families and friends when they shop at these stores. So they want to continue to do that. And it's very difficult to get these shoppers to convert to online shopping. The only people that are shopping online in India are a lot of expatriates or ex-European Union people that live in India now, along with some of their more wealthy, well-to-do population is shopping online. So this is something that they're going to have to work on to capture an audience because right now their people are not used to shopping online. So this is a big industry problem for Amazon within India. So there's also a timing problem. So usually Amazon is a pretty fast mover when it comes to entering into new countries, but in this case, they are a late mover into India. Prior to Amazon, they were having Flipkart, Snapdeal, and obviously Alibaba. So this creates an intense rivalry amongst these firms. Once Amazon entered into India, they realized that they were a late mover and they wanted to buy Flipkart from Walmart. Walmart tried to enter into India as well, but struggled and ended up changing into Flipkart. So this is a difficulty that Amazon had, is they were late to the e-commerce game in India, and there isn't a huge market for it, so it created some issues, and there's intense rivalry amongst these firms. So new strategies for Amazon will be on the next slide, but their current strategy is cost leadership and differentiation. So this is a hybrid type strategy that they're able to do because they have so much availability to capital and availability to cash. So this is their strategy right now. They're a cost leader. Amazon has the lowest prices for a lot of their goods that they sell. Along with differentiation, they have the fastest shipping. A lot of times it comes next day or within the week. And they offer an e-commerce experience where you could pretty much buy anything you want. So that is a differentiation strategy. But in India, you would think that they should run a cost leadership strategy due to a lot of the poverty in India. But this is basically made illegal by the Indian government because they don't want to push away people from shopping at the mom and pop stores, which when 90 to 95% of the population owns those stores, it's a huge part of their economy, so they don't want to take away from that. But with the differentiation strategy, they have a broad market of 1.4 billion people that they could win over to shop at Amazon. And since they can't do cost leadership, differentiation is better, and they can match the prices with the mom and pop stores. They can still try to outperform their competitors by having a large selection of items that the Indian population might not have access to if Amazon didn't exist within their country. So with that, they can offer different items that the merchants aren't selling so that they're not competing with mom and pop stores. Like instead of selling food or anything like that online, they could focus on selling soccer balls or other items like that that are harder to get within India. And this would align with the Indian culture and the spending power of the population because they'd be able to have access to other goods that they want, and they still would be able to shop in person for food and other goods that they're used to shopping in person for. So overall, Amazon's current strategy is a cost leadership and differentiation strategy, but within India, they're going to have to move into a differentiation strategy to avoid the issues with the government. So some solutions that I would like to propose to Amazon within India is that they could implement kiosk-style ordering centers. This would be like a small establishment with a few computers or stands that Indian people could order their items from Amazon on. They could focus on ordering items they could focus on offering items not sold by mom and pop shops. Like I was mentioning before, with the government, it's difficult to compete as competition is pretty much made illegal. So they're going to have to focus on offering items that Indian people cannot find within these stores. They also could open up a small brick and mortar shop because the Indian people are used to shopping in person. So this will align with their culture and align with their values. And this would be more familiar to them. And lastly, if they wanted to play it safe and not spend any more money within India, they could drop out of the Indian market. So to start evaluating these potential solutions, a kiosk-style ordering center helps customers that don't have computers. It's accessible to those who don't have computers or might need some help ordering, have never ordered online before. So it's very accessible to these people. It would also help employ some of the Indian people living in these areas. They could be employed to assist customers, and this can help the economy in India as well. And there would be a minimal startup cost. Some of the storefronts in India are extremely cheap, and the machines that they would need to run this type of business would not be that expensive, especially for Amazon. So it's a small startup cost, but it's doable. Differentiation would be selling items that are not offered in small shops. This would help avoid the competition with the mom and pop shops to avoid any problems with the government. And this would help the population have access to more goods. A lot of the times in third world countries, there's a difficulty accessing different things that we take for granted within America or Europe. So Amazon in India would allow the population to have access to a lot more items that they normally wouldn't have access to. And the next valuation for my potential solutions is to open a brick and mortar location. This aligns with the Indian shopping culture as they're used to shopping in person for goods. This would also help them increase brand recognition. This is because they would have a brick and mortar store, so people would see the Amazon brand, recognize it, and possibly want to go shopping. But if not, it would still create brand recognition. Maybe these people would go look online. So next, this creates jobs. They would need workers to work in the brick and mortar location. So this would create jobs for people around this area. And like the kiosk-style ordering center, this is a minimal to low startup cost. So it wouldn't cost Amazon that much to open up a few brick and mortar locations. And lastly, dropping out of India, they would save money, and they could allocate this money to other regions that have a similar shopping culture to the US or Europe. But before they enter into other markets, they should evaluate other countries by doing cultural and political research. This is to ensure they won't have the same issues that they had in India. So it's just very important to consider these factors before entering a country so you wouldn't have to drop out of another one later on. So to evaluate the outcomes, I wanted to do it in a systematic and data-driven way. So I put together this chart where I asked different questions such as, can we beat the competition in this segment? Do we have the resources and capabilities to conduct the solution? And does it fit with the target fit of our mission and strategy? So I wanted to make sure that this aligned with Amazon's way of doing business, and I gave each category a weight. So the first one is a 40% weight because it's very important to be able to beat the competition. And I found that was the most important. And next, do we have the resource capabilities? I weighted this a 3 or a 30% because Amazon's one of the biggest companies in the entire world, so more than likely they're going to have the capabilities. As you can see across the board, they were given a 10 for their rates in this category. So Amazon being such a large company and their CEO being one of the richest people in the entire world, they're going to have the resources and capabilities to conduct any of these solutions. And lastly, does this target fit with our mission and strategy? So are these different solutions fitting with their target market as well as the mission and strategy of Amazon? So for kiosks, I rated it 9, 10, and 7, and you can see that this was the highest evaluation. Coming in close second is dropping out of India. Although this wouldn't make any money, and I had to say NA for the competition because wouldn't be beating any competition if we were dropping out of India. So that is the second highest. Next is the brick and mortar, and second is, or last is differentiation. So this was how I evaluated these different outcomes using a chart to rate the different ways and figuring it out in a data-driven way. So kiosks is what I believe Amazon should focus on within India. So for kiosks, the objective would be to place 5 kiosks in New Delhi. So this is the capital of India and one of the most populated cities in India and probably in the world. So this would be a great way to attract customers and also give them a way that they can shop without having a computer or a smartphone, and there will be workers there that assist them if needed. They would have to do a greenfield acquisition for this because they wouldn't be able to do a JV due to the laws in India, so they would have to do a greenfield acquisition. And like I said previously, they have very affordable storefronts in India, especially for a company like Amazon. Their stuff is pretty cheap, and Amazon would easily be able to acquire a storefront, and it would require minimal employees working there, so they wouldn't have a huge burden of having to pay a bunch of employees. They would be able to afford to have a couple employees in their centers. So moving on to IKEA in Saudi Arabia, a quick summary of the case is that IKEA entered into Saudi Arabia, and instead of having a new photo shoot for pictures within the store, they found anytime a woman was seen and they just edited her out because she wasn't wearing the proper covering to have pictures taken of her, because obviously these pictures were used in America and Europe and other countries where they aren't Islam run. So within Saudi Arabia, this is illegal to show a woman this way, so they had to edit them out. This created a huge controversy for some of their European customers, and it's overall an ethical dilemma. So there's a few different ways that people look at ethics when it comes to culture. So first is ethical relativism. This is right and wrong differs due to culture, and moral principles can be justified by culture, such as when in Rome, do as Romans do. So this is saying, when you're there, you should fit into the culture and try to adapt. So a pro of this is that it's not really pushing culture on other people, and you get to experience other people's cultures. But a con is that there definitely will be some disagreements in what is wrong and what is right due to the cultural differences, and it's not really trying to come to a middle ground. So as you can see in the political cartoon at right, it's basically showing that neither of them are. The guy on the right is kind of more of an ethical realism. He's like, don't put your values on me. But in the other one, he's basically saying it's bad to kill people. But I thought it was interesting because it looks like they're kind of in Roman outfits. So it's like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So moving on to ethical imperialism. This is a code of ethics that is imposed on another culture or society. It's used in a derogatory sense, and it's basically the belief that one culture is superior to the other. This has been seen a lot throughout history when, for instance, Great Britain took over different countries and made them convert to Catholicism and made them take on the British culture. So this ethical imperialism has a lot of cons, is that it's really not morally right, in my opinion, to impose your culture on another society. There's a lot of death and a lot of war over this type of narrative, and For pros, I guess the only pro is that everybody's on the same page in this sense because they don't have a choice, but that's still kind of a con because everybody should have a choice of what they want to believe. An example of this is the way that people think about each other, especially within the Muslim cultures. And I found this political cartoon that is really interesting, where the woman on the left is in a bathing suit and says everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. So this is how a lot of the people in Europe were seeing IKEA. When they were removing the women from the photos, they were like, this is a male-dominated culture, this is horrible, it's oppressive to women. And they weren't thinking about the practices in Saudi Arabia and how the religion impacts their governing bodies and their culture. So the woman on the right is saying nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. So for her, she's viewing it as, women are allowed to walk around like that for men, whereas she's covering up to protect herself from the male gaze. So you can see on both ends of this, it's hard to justify which is right and which is wrong because both are right and both are wrong in different ways. So I think that's why it's important that you just let people believe what they want, do what they want, and allow them to feel how they want to feel and dress how they want to dress, so that there isn't any type of imposing a culture on someone else. Obviously, if this is taking place in America in this political cartoon, obviously the woman on the right knows that in America it's not required to dress like that, but she still wants to. So that is completely up to her, and that is her prerogative. She's allowed to do that in America. So the religious practice and moral code are separate in America, but they are together within Saudi Arabia and other Islamic cultures. And because of the different views, such polar opposite views between Western culture and Islamic culture, we view them as corrupt, but they view us as corrupt. So I think it's important that we take that into consideration. And with the IKEA case, their European followers were outraged by them removing women from their ads, but IKEA viewed this as a way to avoid any issues, and it's illegal to photograph women the way they did for the ads, with just women in normal clothes. So, they found that this was ethical to just remove the people from the photos. So there's a lot of issues with these beliefs, especially ethical imperialism. There's ways that people use this to their advantage to form arguments that are used to justify heinous acts, such as jihad. They justify this because they believe that that's what their duty is, to impose Islam on other cultures and kill those who get in the way. So this is a way that they justify these heinous acts, and it comes with a lot of human rights issues, low social and economic standards. So you have to be very careful in these countries. And some of the common rules found in many cultures are the golden rule: treat others the way you would want to be treated, do unto others as you would that they should do unto you. So this is a very important cultural thing that's found in almost every culture, along with do not murder and do not steal. So these help govern a lot of different cultures. So starting off with IKEA's mistakes, they used ethical relativism because they did not use new photos, but rather just edited theirs to fit into the culture. They tried to fit into the culture, and I truly believe that they did not mean to offend. And the way that I think about this is it's kind of similar to when companies pick a name for their brand, but that name is offensive or funny in another culture. This has happened with car companies and other things. They name the car something, then they take that car into another country, and then that name means doesn't work or something like that. So I think that this is kind of a similar thing, is where they're not trying to offend anyone, but they also didn't do enough cultural research. So because they just edited the women out of the photos, this created a lot of problems with their European and American customers, and they used ethical imperialism. They believed these images were oppressive because there was no women, and they didn't consider the culture of Saudi Arabia and how a Saudi Arabian person would perceive these images. So I think it's important to consider that neither of these ethical ways of interpreting culture are right or wrong. They can be used in a good or bad way, but it doesn't make it like better or worse or anything like that. It's just both cause problems in different ways, and IKEA was faced with both these problems, with how they reacted and what they did, and how the Europeans and Americans viewed what they did. So this could have all been avoided if IKEA considered their audience. They are entering into a new market, which is expensive in itself, so it really wouldn't be that much of a cost to have a new photo shoot. They want to focus on this market, so like I said, they should just arrange a new photo shoot. It wouldn't cost that much money, and it would just be important to have these images. They also could use these images in other countries, as there is a huge Muslim population in the US and within Europe. So having some photos of a woman with a hijab, with her husband or with her kids, wearing a hijab or any other type of head covering, or the full body covering, this would just be an important cultural aspect to add to IKEA photos and for their catalogs. It would make them more inclusive. And I think this is important in all projects in the workplace. It's very important to be inclusive and include everyone and do the best you can to cover as many cultures as possible. And another example would be when Danone entered into China, and they didn't consider the fact that a lot of Chinese people don't eat dairy and are lactose intolerant. So there's just a lot of cultural problems that can arise whenever you're not doing deep cultural analysis and research, or hiring those that live in the culture to help you with the different cultural differences. Danone did try to do this, but eventually kind of didn't work out. But utilizing people within the country is a great resource. So IKEA could benefit from a joint venture in Saudi Arabia. They would benefit from the cultural knowledge of the company from a foreign country. They could hire managers and marketing directors from Saudi Arabia so that they would not have any issues with their photos or anything like that, following the laws and following everything. So definitely would be something that they should do, is hire some managers from other countries, and they can arrange photo shoots for targeted countries. It's not a big cost, so it would be beneficial to arrange these photo shoots. So overall, with both of these cases, culture is one of the most important factors when entering into a new foreign market. Culture affects many aspects of business: the way people shop, how people shop, where they look for goods, how they go through the consumer process, and all that. It's all affected by culture. So it's very important to consider culture whenever you're entering into a new market. And understanding this culture can make or break relationships. As you can see, because IKEA didn't understand Saudi Arabian culture, they destroyed their relationship with Europeans and Saudi Arabians. So if they would have just understood the Saudi Arabian culture, they would have been able to avoid this in general. So what I took from both of these cases is that culture is one of the most important factors, because it really can make or break business within entering a new country. So if both companies would have considered the culture, they would have avoided many issues. Cultural issues are common and avoidable. With research, with education, with hiring managers or marketing people from these countries, completely avoidable. More research and care, follow other brands in foreign countries, and consult with experts. All of these are ways that Amazon and IKEA could have avoided some of their issues. And that is my presentation. Thank you.